Welcome back to another edition of the Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Zaran. Thank you, as always, for tuning in for another episode of the show. If you've listened over the past few months or since I started this podcast, you probably have heard me briefly bring up gambling, mostly in a negative light. And I always feel that it's good to get a little bit of a peek into the other side. So today I want to talk a lot about the sports gambling space, where it's at, where it's headed. And joining me to talk about this is Gary G. Garrison. If you don't know who Gary is, he's a freelance writer, professional sports bettor, and the creator of the G3 Projection Sport Betting newsletter on Substack, which I follow, and it's daily. So right now it's a lot of MLB picks. And as somebody that's not super locked into baseball, it's a fascination for me. But Gary, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
So Gary, I always want to wonder how people got into betting, right? And so for you, what did that look like? What first interested you about the betting space in sports?
Like everything in my life, I fell into it literally. I live in Florida, so we were a dry state from betting for, ever until just recently. About a year and a half, well, a little bit longer than that, they made it legal here in Florida through the Seminole tribe.
Okay.
And then there was a lawsuit that stopped it. And then the Supreme Court did what they did, which I believe was as late as 2000. Actually, I think I'm getting it backwards. It was 2018 or something, where around there is where it started. Then the tribe started it. It got sued. They stopped. And then one day they cut a deal with the governor of the state and just opened it up and said, we're just going to do it. It's online. We're hosting everything in our building. So it's just like you're on tribal land. And that's how they're getting around it. So about a year and a half, a little more than that ago, my son-in-law came up to me at a family function, and he had his phone out and he goes, "Hey, we can bet now." And I was like,
"Oh, wow.
Cool." So I downloaded it, dropped, $10 in there, and I got hooked, and I didn't get hooked in the way that you do with your first crack pipe or something. It was mostly, I really was into the data behind it. The more I read about it, and it started because I was having success ultimately.
Right.
You have that instant moment of, well, I'm smarter than everybody. Apparently I'm good at this. Let's just do this for a little while. So, that's pretty much how it started. That turned quickly, by the way. I wasn't better than everybody and I wasn't smarter than everybody, but it led me down a path of trying to learn about it and understand what makes this appealing to a lot of people for a profession versus, the guy who's, like my son-in-law, he's a police officer. He's doing it for fun. He enjoys it for that. And he's trying to hit the big parlays. He's trying to do, all the things that I have learned not to do.
Yeah, that's the general wisdom, right? Like the parlays are kind of like how they suck you in. It's kind of such a low probability that you end up, losing money rather than winning. It's just like you see, $10 and I can win 100,000.
Yeah,
it's a lottery ticket, right? It's just
absolutely.
So talk to me a little bit about the projection model here. Like, how did you come up with that? Like, what was the path that led you to? Obviously, don't spill the secret sauce, but just
I won't.
Get into that.
Yeah, but actually, it's an interesting story because it came from a place of, I don't like the term desperation, but it's the word that's coming to me. I had some real good success at the very beginning of my betting journey.
Right.
I was following, not tailing, but following a lot of very smart people, and I thankfully got involved with certain websites that are legitimate and more educational versus trying to just make money off of you. And that led me down a path of, getting into more extreme concepts, if you will, not
like what?
Not crazy parlays or anything like that. I was doing that as well, but it was more understanding trends and system matches. And I had a lot of failure in that. And I ended up getting to a point where I wanted to build a bank back. I had lost a bit of my bankroll, and I actually bought some bets. from somebody who is in the industry. He's on television. He's not a touter. He's not what they call a touter. He's not out there trying to, take everybody's money. He's very solid. And the month I tailed him, he went into regression. It was his first losing month in months.
Wow.
So at that point, I said, I'm smarter than this. I still believe that there's a way around this. And I sat down and started from scratch with taking the data for the NBA and dumping it into a spreadsheet, and then building a model around that basically says how hard is it ultimately to predict based on two teams and what they've done against each other. I mean, the books are doing it. Every time you look at lines, I'm sitting here, I've got next to me my odds book is wide open, and I'm looking at these lines going, how hard is it to come up with this? It's just mathematical formulas, and I don't necessarily have a mathematical background at all, but I was I became mildly obsessed with creating a model, and using AI, I was able to create formulas, which that's a big help when you can't do those things if you're not that person. And I put together a crude formula and back tested it, and it was successful. And I'm like, wow, if it's successful being a crude formula, what if I start doing these things? And that's where we ended up today, where now I have an NBA, a WNBA, an MLB model is new this year. That's brand new for me, and has been very successful so far, thankfully. And I will have NFL and college football. I have a college basketball model that did not do as well as I had hoped. So, it's not all success and red roses.
I mean, yeah, especially when you get into college, I feel like there's a variance there, and with like any of this stuff, none of these are going to be perfect, right? It's just, like you said, you're kind of looking at trends and seeing what's working, what isn't working, that sort of thing. I do want to kind of inject my own kind of personal betting journey here, since you talked about yours. So mine was kind of weird. It was, so years ago, I was working in an Italian restaurant when I lived in Detroit, and I worked with this guy who loved going to the casinos. He was big on gambling. This is way before, FanDuel and any of the apps. Yeah, many years ago. And he decided he had a little bit of extra cash from like some card games he won, and he's like, "Oh, I want to be a bookie," And he was like, "Tell me about it," right? Because I wasn't into it. I was into watching football and stuff. That's most of the bets away he took, and he was telling me about it, and in the process, he was telling me like all the things like, "Oh, this is why the public are a bunch of suckers, and they're seeing this line," and he's like trying to teach me the game, so to speak. And he's like, "Oh, did you ever think about betting yourself?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't know," and he's just like, "Well, I'll tell you what, just try it, throw like $5 on something, see what happens." And it's like, which, makes the drug dealer analogy of sports betting, so accurate. So I was like, all right, cool. It was like a Monday night game. I think the Seahawks are playing or something. And I did it, and then you get like this rush when you win, right? And I was just like, man, that's pretty cool. So I started betting more regularly after that, and we were working together. So like we're on the line, and I was like, oh yeah, who's playing tonight? He's like, oh yeah, Giants and Cowboys. I'm like, all right, cool, let me get whatever, and that's that was a journey. And then after I left that job, I was still doing it. Had a couple really bad weeks in college football, and I was like, let me pause on this for a little while. And then, like a few years later, I was still living in Detroit, and FanDuel and DraftKings were kind of really making a push, and they were giving out like $100 in free bets or whatever, and I got back into it through the apps that way. And now that I live out here in Washington, you have to do it at a tribal casino, which we have like 3 around us here, so pretty easy if we want to. And they're kind of all, or most of them, are backed by DraftKings or whatever, so all the same experience you get on the DraftKings app, you get on these kiosks, which is pretty cool. But that's kind of like my background into it. So I've always kind of been interested in it, and the mobile betting app space now has really elevated, and it's everywhere. I mean, you got ESPN in it right now. You got everybody who's kind of anything in sports. It has a mobile betting app or a mobile betting partnership. The leagues are partnered with these apps, so it's very wide ranging. Why do you think that this has really hit the way that it has? Does it just boil down to everyone has a phone in their pocket? Now it's easy. It's just ease of access, or is it something deeper than that?
It's a combination. I mean, we can go back to the crack dealer analogy. We can go back to, I mean, you can look at cigarettes, you can look at alcohol, you can look at anything that's addictive, right?
Mhm.
If you market it properly, you're going to make people addicted.
Right.
And that's what they've done. They've used every bit of information that they've had throughout the years that they've learned from other industries, and they've applied it here. They put famous faces on it. They've, saturated the market beyond saturation. I didn't realize that there was going to be a commercial that drove me nuttier than any drug commercial does. But now DraftKings ads and FanDuel ads they're
Everywhere.
just, it's
Yeah.
insidious. It's just it's insane how much is out there. And so, yeah, I mean, that's what it is. You get, and what I found being online a lot and having, I'm trying to build my own brand as well. And so I'm on Threads a lot. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on different social media apps. I see there's a lot of single women. I'm not selecting or picking one group out. I'm saying this is what I've noticed is there's a lot of single women who are trying to have a second income or trying to pay for something by chasing the parlay world. They want to be able to put $10 on something and, like you said, walk away with $100,000, or more realistically, they want to walk away with 10 grand or 5 grand. They want to walk away with a win. And it's bad. It's bad pool on part of the DraftKings and the FanDuels. The books are taking advantage of this. They know they're taking advantage of this. There's nobody in power that's going to stop them because money is going to, do this. Given the ability to wave a magic wand and make things change, the first thing I'd have said was FanDuel and DraftKings. No sports book should be publicly traded. Should never be. The manipulation that's coming down the pike eventually is going to be insane, just because they're going to hit they've already hit a saturation point, but they're going to hit a saturation point where they need to continue to feed the beast, and there's not going to be enough people spending money because, as you said, the app is it's right there. It's right in your pocket. You just open it up. I got paid today. I'm going to throw $10 on it, and I'm going to, damn it, the Giants are going to win this week. Well, if you've looked at their last, since 2011, they don't win very often. So why are you betting? And sorry to pick on that, Giants fans, but that's what we're dealing with is, people think they're better than the books. They're not. They think that they can pick a winner or pick, it's well known that the population bets heavy to overs. They love overs. They just think the over is always going to hit, and they bet favorites. They just always think that the favorite's going to hit, and then they bet their heart. One of the best things about me being a bettor is I have no emotion in this whatsoever. I'm indifferent to the whole thing. I didn't watch the Final Four. It's not that I don't like it. It's not that it's a bad product. It just I had other things to do. But when you're taking that excitement that's wrapped around an event, and then you're handing them an app that says you can also bet on this event, and then we're going to show you lines during the game for this event, and you too can get into it, and then they're going to throw a commercial at you with, we get down here because of Hard Rock, we get Post Malone riding on his tour bus, and they very clearly show you him placing a $10 bet and winning $180,000 on it. It happens. People do win, but not to the extent that people think that people win.
Yeah, you mentioned like the marketing aspect, and that's a point that I kind of came to a conclusion of a few weeks back. I wrote a piece about how these apps feel a lot like big tobacco in the 40s.
They do.
And with the way like your doctor testimonial back then is your influencer testimonial today, right? It's somebody that people have built a trust in for whatever reason, and they're gonna go with it. They've also, incorporated sex appeal, and like you look at when PointsBet, before it became Fanatic Sportsbook, they had the Paige Spiranek partnership where they leaned into that heavily, and I think that's now. You also mentioned the kind of like the overabsorption in the market, and I think you're already starting to see it, right? ESPN Bet doesn't seem like it's very viable. Obviously, PointsBet became Fanatics Sportsbook, and they're kind of really going into the whole stack of the fan experience, right? That's like their thing with the merchandise. Now they bought Tops, and then they have the sports book, so that's like their whole kind of ecosystem of sports fandom.
Mhm.
Do you think we're kind of heading to a thing where it's really the big two, DraftKings and FanDuel, and then everybody else will fall by the wayside, similar as we've seen in other industries?
That I don't know. What they will eat their own. It's like
Mm.
any major industry. We love to say America is a capitalist society, but everybody loves capitalism until there's competition. Then
Right.
nobody's a capitalist, right? So they're gonna eat their own at some point. We've already had a huge amount of books that came into different states, small no names that have been put out of business, or the taxes were too much in that state. New York, Massachusetts, those places. And then you're going to get to a point where FanDuel is going to start trying to cut a deal. I'm picking people. I don't have information here or anything, but they're going to start going to Win and cutting deals with Win or Circa. We've already seen DraftKings spun off VSiN. They bought them a few years ago. They just spun them back off, and now VSiN's out, and it looks like they're starting to work some deals with Circa to have a more closer aligned relationship with them. So yeah, I think there'll be a consolidation, as there is with any market. I think what really keeps them kind of honest is because of the technology, you have the offshores. And while the offshores have existed for 20, 30 years, it was harder to deal with them, just 15 years ago than it is today. And the advent of all these apps makes it even easier for you to go out and find a Bovada or find a book on, Bet Online, or, Bookmaker or something like that, Pinnacle, and use those offshore books. So there's always that aspect of, it's hard to put down, to make it too difficult, because people can, if they really want to, go find it elsewhere.
Yeah, and when I'm kind of thinking about this too, like from the customer loyalty aspect, like I feel like a lot of people for the longest time, for a very brief period, I was furloughed from a job, and I got a job at a casino trying to sign people up for Bet MGM. And we'd be like, hey, you triple your money, whatever, you sign up on the iPad and that whole thing. And and it just really seemed like people would be like, well, I would, but I have FanDuel or I have DraftKings. But then eventually it kind of turned into, you're kind of riding the promos, right? And like, who has a better promo right now? How much can I get in free bets if I bet with this thing? And do you think that's kind of going to be the status quo for a while, where people are jumping promo to promo? Or are we going to end up on a point where, what, I've won on FanDuel, I'm going to stick with FanDuel and develop a little bit of customer loyalty in that way?
I think you'll have a home base. It's the subscription model, really, on some level. You'll have a home base. You'll always be married to Netflix. You won't get rid of them for whatever reason, or I guess Max, maybe because of HBO tie-in. You just won't get rid of them. But the minute you see something go on somewhere else, you'll be the first one to jump on it. You'll be a FanDuel loyalist, but you'll see, DraftKings maybe will put out a deposit $500 today, and we'll match you plus add 1,000 or some insane number that they do, knowing they're going to make it back from you. But people will jump on that all the time, and I see it quite often just in the groups, the Discords that I'm a part of, and the groups that I chat with regularly. They're constantly hitting promos out there to people saying, hey, if you do this right now, here's the bet I'm recommending, but log in, use my name, because I'm gonna get my little kickback on it as well. And that's a big thing. So, but I do think that there will always be just that one app that you're married to, that you really, and for whatever reason, you just like it. It just works for you. Maybe you think in your mind that you're winning more there than you're winning somewhere else.
And you see that, like, Fanatics is trying to do that with theirs, right? Where they're trying to tie in the merchandise thing. Oh, bet with us, and then you get a discount on the next jersey you want to buy, or something like that, which is smart, to create that ecosystem. But I think you're right there, where there is always going to be the comfort level where, creatures of habit, that sort of thing. You touched on sports media and the infiltration or the integration, whatever word you want to use, with sports books. Like, you're watching a game, you're seeing live lines, FanDuel themselves, they bought all the RSNs, regional sports networks, and you're picking up a lot of these NBA and MLB games. You're also seeing they have their own media entity where, like Kay Adams has a show on FanDuel, for example. And so it's just a lot of integration into sports media. There is a lot more conversation about betting and betting lines when it comes to analysis now as well. Anybody's favorite sports podcast is sponsored by FanDuel, sponsored by DraftKings, whatever you listen to. To you, is this a net good? Like, it's always been a part of the conversation, but there's always I felt like more implied than as in your face. Do you think that sports media really diving into the gambling element is a good thing?
I think what they're trying to do is not a bad thing. The problem is you can't have Charles Barkley telling you that you need to spend your money on Memphis because Ja Morant's doing, whatever right now. That's not analysis. It has no trend in it whatsoever. He's being fed something by a producer. Maybe he's got his own information and he's doing something. That's where it turns bad. And it goes back to sort of the influencer concept of, we're going to have ESPN bets, and we're tying all of our ESPN shows into the betting aspect of it. All of that's great if they're giving you information. If you're watching VSiN, which is on YouTube TV, you can get it. You can watch it on their website if you're a member. I think you have to be a member. But if you're watching, VSiN, you're getting analysis. You're getting what is meant to be given. But I think with it, I don't mind personally that it's on a sporting event. If I'm watching the Super Bowl and they've got information, I want to see the information. But if the information is just, Joe Buck, regurgitating something, I don't want to dismiss him, but I don't take it very seriously when it comes from those. So I don't think it's bad, but I think it's bad how it's presented.
Yeah, and I feel like there's been a lot of pushback where people are like, look, man, I'm just trying to watch a game. I don't care what the over-under is, right? And conversely, you could say somebody would be like, well, I do care what the over-under is because I'm trying to get in on this live bet.
Exactly.
So
there's a way to do it. If you've watched Apple TV's version of Friday Night Baseball, number one, I wish Apple TV would take over all of the RSN baseball stuff. It's a beautiful product, and I'm not an Apple guy. I'm not, all Apple all the time. But it's just an absolutely gorgeous product, and they do lines, they do probabilities. And it's all based on data, and it's all information that's useful. But you don't have the announcer, or worse yet, the color analyst, who's just a former ball player, telling you what you should be betting. Because again, I come back to that. That's not information. That's just influence, and I don't need it. I don't need that kind of influence in my betting. I want to make the decisions myself, because that's what makes you a better bettor, is understanding what it is you're betting, not just listening, like I said, to Charles Barkley tell you. As they're heading out of a commercial, that this is the direction you should go. So that's my take on that.
Let's kind of get back into this addiction aspect, right? And a lot of people are getting in it. A lot of people are doing parlays. The dark side of that is the access that people have in social media, where like college kid misses a 3-pointer. He opens up his Instagram DMs and people are mad that they lost a bet because he missed that 3-pointer.
Right.
We see it in the pros all the time as well. And, like guys like Kevin Durant joke about it, like, oh, I guess you didn't hit that parlay, champ, whatever. And it's kind of become a joke to them in that way. But do you find that this is something that is going to continue to be a problem? And if so, is it the responsibility of an app to really kind of try and put out messaging against that sort of behavior?
Well, I think no different than if the cigarette manufacturers never knew what they were doing was bad.
Right.
We're all adults. It's on us to make those decisions. If information comes out and we all choose to just ignore it, it's one thing. But when you're going out of your way specifically to mute that information, then it becomes harmful, right? We all know cigarettes are bad for us, but some people just enjoy smoking a cigarette. So let them do what they want. I'm a big personal freedom kind of person, but as long as you're not infringing on others. But that being said, I do think that there are lines that we shouldn't be crossing. I don't think there should be any prop betting in college. When it comes to the little bit of, I have a lot of faith in the gambling establishment to stop problem players. We can get into the Porter conversation, however you want to go about that. But that's a more difficult thing when you're looking at, apparently Temple had some accusations going on with them tanking a few things. There's outlier schools that if you start allowing, or you continue to allow, prop bets on college players, it's going to be more tempting for them to do the wrong thing than it is for a professional player. I think Porter is an outlier. I think he has an addiction. He has a problem, and he was trying to take advantage of that. And I think that's different than a guy who just, Jordan had a problem, but like Pete Rose, I don't think Jordan ever bet against himself.
Right.
So however you want to take that with Pete Rose, I think he should be in the hall, but there should be a big ass asterisk right next to his name and says what he did. And there probably should be one next to Jordan. But again, I don't think they did anything to hurt the game. Porter, he did something to hurt the game. I mean, he was going out of his way to, something's in my eye and I have to come out of the game. That's where it gets wrong. But I may be on an island, but I really do believe the books go out of their way because it costs them. That they can't. They're not going to be a part of it. First off, but it costs them in the long run if the integrity goes down. So they police themselves very well. I feel like in listening to some of the experts in gambling that have been doing this for 20, 30 years, they all say the exact same thing. The books are the first to know, and they're the first to tell. And that's great. That's what I have to bank on for that, to make sure that, you see everybody when their parlay dies, they want to scream and holler that, it's fixed. It's fixed. Yeah, no, you just aren't really good at picking parlays, man. You got to stop. So
that's something that I think has increased, right? Where for many years, like a big joke among sports fans was, Vegas put the call in, right? Whatever, which is kind of like an offhanded BS comment, right? But I feel like now that's increased even more. It's just like, well, I didn't hit this 9-leg unlikely parlay, so obviously the refs are in on the cut. And in the NBA, it's a lot of criticism there. One, because there's a general notion that all refereeing in the NBA is terrible. Right. And two, you have the Donaghy precedent, and so like that has become amplified, I think, because more people are doing it. Like before, it was offshore, but a lot of people didn't trust that, or if they're in Atlantic City or Vegas, right? And they were going to try and bet in person there. And now it's just, you got an iPhone, you got a Galaxy phone. All right, cool. As long as you're in one of the 30 or so states that allows mobile betting, then you're in good shape. What's complicated?
That goes all the way back to the Black Sox, 1908.
And there's been point shaving scandals for
ever. But it comes back to how many people can you have in the middle of a conspiracy before one of them gets greedy enough to blow the conspiracy. And that's what we don't have. And that's what nobody can ever prove. And that's, again, you come back to Porter, the establishment, the books, they didn't pick on him. They were getting screwed by him. And they're going to do what they can to protect their own and to protect the integrity of what it is that they do. So, and I'm not 100% sure I answered your question fully when you'd asked it, but, to circle back real quick, I do believe that college, you shouldn't be able to bet on players at all whatsoever in any way, shape, or form in any sport. And then, there's something that has to be done a little bit about people who are threatening players in the NBA. I mean, you got a problem if you didn't hit, like you said, a 9-leg parlay, and then you're going to blame the player because you didn't hit and you hit 7 of your 9. Look in a mirror, dude. This is a you problem. This is not an NBA problem, and it's definitely not a conspiracy. It's just you suck at this.
Go back to Porter. So there's a new piece that dropped by Mike Vorkunov of The Athletic, and he was kind of basically outlining how deep this went with him and how he was deeply in debt to a couple of these guys because, like you said, he has a gambling addiction. And and he then did all that he did where he got games early, so the unders on his props would be hitting, and then they eventually the NBA kind of got involved and figured it out. FBI investigators got involved, so it's a whole thing. He's banned for life.
Right.
At the same time, all these leagues are in bed with the apps, right? So where's the middle line there where you're like, well, we have to preserve the integrity of basketball or whatever sport, but also check out FanDuel, official gambling partner of the NBA. Is that a hypocrisy? Is it just this is business and we're trying? They're offering money and we're going to take the money. What do you stand?
It's the typical corporate hypocrisy for sure. I mean, without a doubt. But I still I'm going to keep saying I believe in the books. I don't believe in FanDuel. I don't believe in DraftKings. I don't trust them because they're publicly traded. And you'd have to really understand what that means from a large corporation mentality, which is you're going to eventually have a rogue investor walk in and say, you didn't make me enough money this year. You made me a buttload of money, but it wasn't enough of a buttload. And I need you to start doing things to make that better. And the product is going to hurt itself because they're publicly traded. But you're not going to see that same thing happen if you're betting at Circa or if you're betting at one of the established hotels, because that's just not how they're going to operate. Even though they are publicly traded, the hotels themselves are publicly traded. The betting portion of it is a small portion of what it is that they do. But when things go bad, it's probably going to be FanDuel and DraftKings that are the reason. That's my opinion on that.
Yeah, it feels like it's headed that way because they're the most visible faces of it too, right? Where you're kind of, when you think of sports betting to the average layperson who's not really fully in the weeds on it, they say FanDuel, they say DraftKings, they might say BetMGM, they might say whatever, whatever outlet they happen. Yeah, for sure. I want to get holistic into the science of betting. Earlier, we talked about my entry into it and just the emotional feeling you get because you have this sort of, you're part of the action, right? Which is a line that they've used in marketing copy for FanDuel before. So, it wasn't an original thought by me there, but it's like, talk to me a little bit about the secret sauce of it. Like, what about it do you think just gets people, I don't want to say so hooked, but just drives their interest in coming back to the well, even after they lose? Like you talked about somebody just being bad at doing parlays and losing on a 9-leg or whatever, but they always come back. So what about it makes them come back to you?
That's the lottery psychology though, right? I mean, there's people that have religiously gone on a Friday with their paycheck, hit the grocery store, grabbed some dinner for the wife on their way in, or the wife is doing it herself and they just go up and hit a bunch of scratchers because they've looked or they heard on the radio that it's up to 40 million, right now. And they think, why not? Somebody's got to win. And it really is kind of that, why not? Somebody's got to win. But I think with gambling, the difference, especially in sports gambling, is you think you know better. I'm a huge Notre Dame fan. My number one rule, I don't bet Notre Dame.
Yep.
Period. Because a smart bettor would never bet their home team. They would never bet the thing that they're emotionally tied to. So if I'm watching them play some, podunk game, not to pick on Air Force, they're playing Air Force or something like that. It's easy to look at it and think as a bettor that I know the outcome of this. Notre Dame's going to romp them. They're going to do this and they're going to get this many yards. The total's going to go over. And, and then here I am putting my money down. And next thing I know, Air Force had a great day and Notre Dame pulled a, Northern Illinois again and, got stomped for no particular reason. So, bettors just don't understand it. They don't want to understand it. I've tried to talk to family members. I got family members who are huge sports fans, crazy sports fans, and they bet. They don't want to know what it is that I know. And that's because it's boring to them. They're in it for the rush. They're in it for the thing that is addictive. I'm in it because I want to make money. And that's the addictive part to me.
Right.
My job, I want to make money at it. I was doing it as a side hustle. I have been out of work now for 5 months, and this has just morphed into the thing that I have to do to bring in income and to try to make enough money to survive on it while I build the brand around it. But I'm not looking at it as, oh my gosh, I'm from St. Louis. The Cardinals are playing tonight. I've got to throw money on it real quick because I know they're gonna stop the. It's just it doesn't work that way for me. But that is how we get to where we get to. It's that lottery mentality of people just believing that all I got to do is hit the scratchers the right way and use my lucky quarter. Well, you've been using that for 14 years. You haven't won shit yet. So not thinking that you might need a different quarter. I don't know. So yeah, it's my wife got into it a little bit because of me, and she likes to play parlays, and she does small ones because at least she listens. And she's right at it because she's an NBA nut. She understands NBA way better than I do, and I'm doing this for a living. But even she can get frustrated with not understanding why she's not winning as much as she should because she knows so much. And that's what they bank on. I mean, really, they're just banking on you making that emotional decision or making that I know better decision.
The emotional piece is so important because even when you think about when you talk about a sport, like I use basketball as an example. Obviously, basketball has become very driven by analytics lately. The advanced stats are all over the place, and a lot of times, some people they just want. I feel like why they always cling to the 80s and 90s is because you used to operate off of vibes in that era. There weren't advanced plus minus box, whatever, 4 out, whatever. And it's just there's I just want to see and marvel at it and have this emotional attachment. I'm with you. As you can see behind me, got a couple of Knicks things up. I'm a big Knicks fan. I never would bet on the Knicks because I'm going to pick them to win every time because I want them to win. It's just that's just not how it should. You shouldn't operate in that way, but people do, right? And then when you win, it's euphoria. Right,
because you wore a special shirt that day, and and you did everything. Right. It's the football. The NFL it's just crazy. The people I know that I know, I have again a family member who's a massive Browns fan, and every year it's their year, and all I can do is just shake my head because I'm like, it's the Browns, man. Come on, they got sort of halfway, kind of close a few years ago. Right. It's the Browns. They're not going.
We're a playoff team one time, dude. Yeah. So to kind of close out here, talk to me a little bit about the future of all this from a personal and professional standpoint, because we have never had access to more data. Your models are widely available, right? So subscribe to your Substack and get a good feel. But at the same time, it feels like people still kind of impulse bet in a way. So do you see or forecast seeing any changes in the way that professional bettors are going to be approaching it, and also in the way that your individual bettor is going to approach the way that they're spending their betting dollars?
I think the professional bettor does what they do because they like what they do. It's not so much that they love sports. It's that, and I don't know that it's so much like the really good professional guys. Bill Krakenberger is one of the people I love to listen to. I listen to him all the time. He's got a podcast, and it's a blast to listen to him because he's old school. He's like that old New Jersey's, been in Vegas forever, that old school kind of guy. And there's a kind of a running joke I heard that was said about him that somebody had mentioned Ben Roethlisberger for him, and he wasn't quite sure who Ben even played for. Because he's not into the sport, he's just into the mechanics of it, which is really what draws me now. Today, it's the mechanics. It's not even the sport so much. I don't think we're going to see much of a change from the DraftKings side. I think the average bettor is trying to hit a lottery. I think they're trying to hit a home run every time they throw down $1, $100, whatever it is. No matter how many times people like me go online and say out loud, don't do that. It's not the way to go about it. You can be profitable. I'm profitable, but I'm profitable because of discipline, and I'm profitable the way you would be profitable in the stock market. I am not raking in 6+ figures, and anybody who's online telling you they are is probably not doing that unless they're selling their picks, which, as you mentioned, my Substack, that will eventually go behind a paywall. It has to, just because It is becoming better and better. The models are getting better and better. And I don't want to monetize everything, but at some point it takes a lot of my time to do that, and to do it for free for others. I might as well just do it for me and, just make the money myself. But I also want to help people, but there's got to be a little bit of a give and take in that. And right now I just do it for tips. I do get tips. It's great. It's a good feeling when somebody, has won money because you told them what to do. But I see the professional bettors just doing it because of what they do. That this is just what they do. They don't necessarily need to do anything different. But the retail bettor, he's a retail bettor for a reason. And if they want to learn, they can always come hang out with me online and ask any question, and be more than willing to try to guide them through what it is they're doing. But it's going to start with stop playing parlays. If you can't get that out of your head, then the conversation is going to be a really short one.
Yeah, like I think about my own betting during the football season, and what I would do is just like I find like some games or overs or whatever that I like, and then I just kind of go with those individually. And I would have like a little bit left. And I was like, oh, whatever, throw like 5-leg parlay. If it hits, it hits. I'm assuming it's going to lose,
right?
And that was kind of like my approach. And I feel like that's probably, when you tell people that, they're like, yeah, well, I was on Twitter and I saw this person turned $10 into $500,000, and it's just like, all right, man, like that's not the case. Like I think about when NBA players used to come out of high school, like everybody wanted KG, right. But on the road to getting KG, you had about 15 Sebastian Telfairs, right? and so it's just like the hit rate is really low, and people see, because people share their wins. No one shares their losses, like your average person. Like if for you share your losses because it's a different space, and like I check yourself, like, oh, I had a rough day, but this was the thing. And I think that's a good way to look at it. I do wonder, just kind of like a final point, sports have become more of a math problem in recent years, and it's a lot of probability. It's like the NBA is the best example of that. 3 is worth more than 2, so take more 3s, right? That became the math problem. A lot of people don't like that. They're like, what about the art and the craftsmanship of the mid-range jumper?
Right.
And it's not as cold and calculating as, well, step back a couple feet and hit a 3. Right. And it feels like that trend, in addition to the growing mathematical trends in betting, I feel like they kind of go hand in hand. So do you think, because of the more mathematical nature the sports has turned into, that kind of using these models is really the way to go, and they're only going to get better because of that reason? Or is it something else?
Well, I mean, to start, the books are always going to be sharper than everybody, right? So they're already using AI. They're already using, computational algorithms that are blowing anything out of the water that the average person can come up with. And it takes a very special person to figure that kind of stuff out. I'm dumber than a box of rocks, and I've at least gotten to a point where I can be successful with a model that's been driven around those things. The math behind it, I mean, we can go back to Bill James and blame him. I mean, let's start there. To this day, and I think I think I might have an answer to kind of how you worded that. I love baseball. That's what I grew up with, right? Growing up in St. Louis, the first thing they hand you is a onesie, and it's a Cardinal jersey. It's just, there's a glove, there's a hat, there's a little baby bat, there's everything is in your bassinet there. At some point, Bill James came along and started creating, and then the people who subscribed to his way of thinking later on, you ended up with WAR, and you ended up with, pick any of those weird, replacements and all the other stuff. And my big thing when I had this conversation with somebody before was, because they were like, I don't understand why you don't appreciate these things. I said, because I don't understand them. When you ask me, what's a good batting average? I can tell you clearly, well, the best there was Ted Williams and his 400. If you're hitting 350 consistently, you're a Hall of Famer guaranteed. 250, you're probably in if you're, got a couple championships, and, there's numbers that tell me what those things are. So I think there's a generational gap of what those new metrics are, because I don't know what is, you tell me to go look at, what OPS, what's the number? What's the number that I need to know to say, oh, if I look at that guy and he's got a 900, that's amazing. And if it's 400, he should be in the minors. we know those numbers from an ERA. We know those numbers from like I said, a batting average. We know those numbers for wins and losses and complete games and all the simple stuff that we had for 100 years. And now over the last 20 or 30 years, we've had this new level of numbers that have come in, and it's heavy in basketball. It's heavy in baseball. I think you're seeing some of it in football, but I think it's a little harder to build an analytic around, here's the ball, run, dude. That's kind of pretty simple. But I guess it's kind of there. The check down, the West Coast offense was sort of the originator of the more efficient offense. But again, we understand those numbers. But I think that might be the difference when you're having that conversation of, is the math going to drive it? Absolutely. The math is going to be what it is in the future. But those people that look back at the old days and they say, Michael Jordan, that's the era. And, it was a different era. It was an amazing era. Thankfully, I got to see Jordan play live. I got to see LeBron play live many times. I can tell you they're both amazing. And I can tell you that there's nothing that says they're both not the greatest in their era. But then the argument of which is which, if they were in different eras, that's a great conversation. But I think the math is here to stay. I think it's good. It's helped me with some of the things that I do with building my models to understand how to do some things. I was looking at a guy's model who does NHL, and I'm blown away by how spectacularly detailed his model is. It's just phenomenal. But yeah, I do believe that it's here. We're stuck with it, and it's going to start driving betting as well. It's going to end up making the lines even higher. You're going to stop seeing 110 as being the norm. I think 120 is eventually going to be the norm, and continue to go up from there. We're already seeing baseball games. I was just looking at I think the Padres or somebody today, or the Yankees. Somebody's like already minus 400 for the day. Dodgers, that's what it was. The Dodgers are like minus 400. Not going to bet that.
Not even worth your time.
No.
Gary, I do want to thank you for this. This was a illuminating conversation, and I got everything I asked for and more. So thank you so much for that. If you could just let everybody who's listening know where they could follow you on social and Substack and all that good stuff. Yeah,
I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Threads. Both are Trips G11. With some of them have lines, some of them don't. It's a little too much. My Substack is also Gary G3 Garrison at Triple G. I think it's Triple G11. You can find me there. I'd love to have conversations with anybody, and feel free to follow, and hopefully we win some money together. We're having a great MLB season so far. Right now, it's been very solid,
except playoffs. I guess real quick, do you have any teams you like from a betting perspective in the NBA playoffs, or not really?
It's Boston. It's the Lakers. It's the Thunder. I don't really know that the Cavs are going to go as deep as people expect. They've struggled a little bit over the last 20 games or so. Right. Boston turned it on at the right time, man. They hit their stride. They look great. I wouldn't want to go up against them. I live in Orlando. Here we got the Magic. They've got us leading lambs to slaughter, I think. Although surprise, I just noticed today, I happen to be looking at it that Orlando beat Boston twice this season in Orlando. So who knows? I do like the Magic, but I'm actually a Laker guy. So yeah, we'll see. And it's funny because I don't have those weird biases, but yeah, the Celtics are great. I'm a fan of good teams and good games. That's what turns me on when I watch sports in general. It's why I like college football so much, because I don't have to be a fan. I am a fan of Notre Dame, but I don't have to be a fan of any one team. I can, hell, the SEC alone, living in the South, and I'm not an SEC fanboy, but right there, every week you've got Alabama against, Auburn, and the next week you've got Mississippi State again. It's just really fun to watch good sports when they're playing at their best, which is why the NBA kind of sucked the last couple of weeks, because there were some bad games the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, everybody resting, or they got the tank jobs, and just the dregs of the NBA season where you're just waiting for the playoffs to start, and I hear you on the college thing because I've always liked it because I never really had a team either. I grew up in New York City. We don't really have a college team there unless you want to go down to Rutgers or something like that in Jersey. But, and like Syracuse felt too far away. It's just kind of like, so I just kind of always been general watching, top 25 watching. Yeah. And, that's a fun way to be,
I agree because I literally look at the schedule for the week and say, these are the games I want to watch because these are the teams that are playing their best football right now. And there are weeks I don't watch Notre Dame. Again, like I said, no offense to Air Force, but it's not really a game that I want to watch. It's but yeah, I think the Knicks are going to do well. I don't know that they're going to make it too deep. But
yeah, I'm at the point where I'm just like, all right, get past Detroit in the first round and just don't get embarrassed by Boston in the second round, and I've kind of resigned myself. There's more than likely we're looking at a second round bounce out again. And we'll see what the offseason looks like after that. But if they get embarrassed, like it gets swept and it's all blowouts, gonna have a couple tough conversations over the summer.
Exactly.
In Knicks land. But
hopefully
Gary, thanks.
Randomly fire their coach like everybody else has been.
Hey, we'll see. I mean that's been the Knicks' MO over the last quarter of a century. So we'll see what they do. But Gary, thanks again for joining me.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Welcome back anytime, of course. If you want to follow us on this podcast, we are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. Deep Cover Podcast. I'm your host, Omar Zaran. Thank you as always for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.